Okay, everyone, welcome back to DSP versus the Internet, episode 76. We are into the submissions tier videos now. Let's continue.
If you've ever used LimeWire to illegally download a very low-quality MP3 of Akon Smack that's actually Afro Man's Because I Got High, but also the file is mislabeled as Sandstorm by Stan with Eminem in parentheses, and oh, no wait, never mind, it's actually just 12 viruses in a trench coat disguised as a song, I have one question to ask you. You wouldn't download a fucking car, would you? The year is 1999, and I am 5 years old. Ah, look at his giant head. As I play Space Cadet Pinball on my father's very heavy-set Windows 98 off-white desktop computer while farting and coming, over in Massachusetts, Sean Fanning and Sean Parker, portrayed by Justin Timberlake obviously, launch a little application called Napster. And Napster says, "Hi music industry, I'm Napster, and I'm gonna set you on fire." For the very first time, there is an easy to use tool available to the masses that lets you download all of the music in all of the lands. And for free. Oh my god, that's crazy. And this is pretty monumental because music had existed since the first time Adam was like, "Everybody clap your hands." And Eve was like, "Stop it, what is happening? Cut it out." And now thanks to the MPEG-1 audio layer 3, aka the MP3 if you didn't go to college, you didn't have to buy a physical record or cassette or CD just to listen to one song. CD? More like, do you see these songs on my computer? You know what I'm saying? Now, Napster is super important, not just because it lets you download Kryptonite by 3 Doors Down really slowly and for free, but because it introduced peer-to-peer or P2P file sharing to the masses. What peer-to-peer means is that instead of one person uploading a file to a central server and then another person downloading that file from a central server, peer-to-peer takes out the middleman and just lets people share files and dirty little secrets directly with each other. Dirty little secret.
I wonder if today, if something like this were to still be prominent, which is not because it's all legal now, right? They shut it all down. But would people find ways to abuse it? Because back then, I mean, I'll be honest, everyone used it. I used it, everyone did. Everyone in the late 90s, early 2000s was doing file sharing. Napster, LimeWire, Kazaa. There was like 7 or 8 of them that all over the years were more prominent, right? First, it was just music. Then it became like comic books. Then it became video files, movies, and then it became literally everything. Software and games, you know, productivity software. Like no one paid for anything. Everything was free via file sharing for a good 5-year period. And then basically the government came in and shut it down everywhere and no one could do it anymore. So what I'm wondering today is, if this were to hit today, would immediately people find malicious ways to use it? Because back then, I was shocked that it worked, and really you got away with it, and it wasn't like you destroyed your computer. Like, even though you could get viruses doing it, all you needed was antivirus software, and you'd be fine. You know what I mean? Like, today, what are the chances that the first file you downloaded wouldn't be a goddamn keylogger that would immediately grab all the data off your computer and get all your logins, and next thing you know, you have no money in your bank account. Some guy in, you know, Zimbabwe has it instead, right? But back then, this was so common. Literally everyone used it, and no one had horror stories of, oh, my whole life was stolen, right? Like, my identity, my money, everything's stolen. No, I was impersonated to do a million things. None of that happened. So it's just remarkable. It was kind of like the ultimate, hey, just trust everyone, and everyone just give everything away for free, and it worked. It literally worked like that. For many years, it was fine until finally the government went after it. You know what I'm saying? People are saying, yes, it's still used. Like Ellipsian says, it's still widely used, but you need to get stuff from reputable sources. Right. You can't just steal. You have to be getting it from a source that's fair to get from, or else you get in trouble, right? With the law. Come after you. But, no, dude, everyone did this back in the day. This was so incredibly common. Music particularly, but movies as well. All that shit. Games. Everyone. I mean, the entire library of the Sega Dreamcast console was ripped and put onto these file sharing services. And this is why the Dreamcast literally failed. It was a great console, but within 1 year of it being out, no one bought games for it because you could just steal all the games off the internet. So, Okay.
Obviously being a reference to the All-American Rejects smash hit, Move Along. Moving along, P2P can be used to transfer all sorts of files, not just MP3s, and eventually it will. Like, like a lot of porn. But Napster only let you do MP3s, and Napster gets crazy popular, eventually reaching like 80 million registered users at its peak, which if you know simple math, you know that that's more than 4. But the Recording Industry Association of America, aka RIA, isn't having any of that shit. On December 7th, 1999, only months after the launch of Napster, RIA files suit on Napster's butt cheeks on behalf of the 5 major record labels: UMG, SME, WMG, EMI, BMG, KFC, CKY. Between its launch in 1999 and its shutdown in 2001, basically everyone and their dog tried to sue Napster. A&M Records, Metallica, Dr. Dre, who is, he famously said, "Fuck Napster." But this was a ton of publicity for the app, and it only led to more and more people sprinting towards Napster to take advantage of the service before it would inevitably be taken down. The service finally shut down on July 11th, 2001, but dog, it was too late. The effects were irreversible. The entire internet had done a sick-ass Superman seat grab and completely transformed almost overnight. But with no Napster, where did people turn? Allow me to introduce you to my friend Kazaa. Oh, have you met LimeWire? This is my very lightweight, tiny friend who's eventually gonna kind of be a huge deal, and his name is BitTorrent. While Kazaa and LimeWire were the apps that were the most popular immediately after Napster's death in 2001, both of them were a little bit goofy. a little drunk, maybe.
I will say this. Napster was 100% like safe. Like almost never was there an issue. Oh, I download something off Napster, it doesn't work. It's a glitch. It's a virus. It was Kazaa and LimeWire where stuff started to have that shit in it. Be like, oh, it's a whole, it's all these games. You go to download it, and it's not. It's just a fake file with a bunch of fucking viruses in it and shit. So that's what happens. It basically went to the Wild West of other people trying to copy Napster before they got shut down, and then there was no regulation and no protection for any of it. You didn't know what you were getting.
Maybe they were hitting grandma's bottle cabinet? I don't know. LimeWire was released in May of 2000 by a dude named Mark Gordon, who has degrees from Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. And apparently, all of them meant nothing when he made LimeWire. And Kazaa was released in 2001, and it was developed by some Scandinavian dudes whose names I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but they also would later go on to help develop Skype. What is this, the fucking History Channel? I don't look like an ice road trucker. But also, more extra importantly, both of these were absolute garbage for your computer. I want to talk specifically about Kazaa first. Kazaa here was closed source, which means that to this day, people don't know exactly how everything worked. For example, the algorithm used to double check that 2 files are actually the same thing. Like if 2 dudes both upload Say My Name by Destiny's Child, and it's trying to double check that they're both the same thing so we can organize them. It did not do a good job, which means that A, you could download what you thought was It's Been a While by Stained, but surprise fucker, that's Weird Al. And B, if you're downloading some software or video games that have some .exes in them, please .excuse me from my computer before I invite 17 really cool viruses into my home. And hey, you remember our pal Rhea? They were doing it too, yeah. They were fighting the war on illegally downloading music by spreading fake-ass corrupt files on Kazaa. Isn't the internet so crazy? I didn't
know that. I didn't know that they were doing it. What I know is they were tracking it. So, for example, they would identify a movie. So let's say, for example, I don't know, Spider-Man from the early 2000s. They would identify that someone is uploading that movie. They would download it, and they would put a tracker in it to see where it goes. And once they have actual evidence of the IP addresses of people who downloaded the movie illegally, they would serve a cease and desist to the ISP. And then your ISP, your internet service provider, whatever company you get your internet from, would send you a letter saying, we received notice from the RIAA or the MPAA or whatever regulatory body it is that we have evidence you downloaded an illegal file, cease and desist, because if you keep doing it, we have the right to refuse you internet service. So that's how they were doing it. They were purposefully tracking people doing it and then basically giving them threats, right? So now, did everyone listen to that? Probably not. I'm sure some people did. Well, I'm sure a lot of people didn't. But I guess that was their way, their bluff. Because you really think they're going to go after an ISP and sue the ISP? I don't think so. I think it was just kind of a way to scare people.
Like, kind of huge bad thing about the app, it was riddled with adware and malware.
Yeah. Yep.
And spyware. Basically everywhere you could think of. It had it. WarioWare, Ace Hardware. But regardless, Kazaa is popping off hard from like 2001 to 2004.
They were around for a while.
So hard that in 2003, our favorite pal Rhea over here says, you know what? Fuck it. If we can't sue Kazaa, we're just gonna start suing a bunch of Kazaa users directly for a shit ton of money, like college students. Why? Fuck them. That's why. You don't need a fucking business degree. Society is a lie. Anarchy, dude. Gamers are the government. As you could imagine, traffic starts to die down on Kazaa because users are getting afraid of going to jail. And while users scatter to other P2P services like LimeWire in 2006, Kazaa's parent company, Charmin, is sued by MGM in this huge lawsuit and ends up settling for the little tiny baby amount of $100 million, which is a lot of, I'll rephrase it for my younger viewers so they could better understand it. It's like if you took 4 of your mom's credit cards. Yeah. Like, so many V-Bucks. You get it. I'm proud of you. Okay, so anyways, what Kazaa and LimeWire had in common is all of the bad stuff, mislabeled files, viruses, malware, a really cool feature where every song is actually just Bill Clinton saying,
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
LimeWire would even eventually release a version that you could pay for called LimeWire Pro that promised better search results and faster downloads, but because life is hilarious and pirates always find a way around stuff, you could just download LimeWire Pro with LimeWire, which is the funniest thing in the world. It wasn't perfect. It was probably gonna require your parents' computer to go to Planned Parenthood and get tested for every STD imaginable, but god damn it, bro.
All right. I'm just curious how far he goes. He's still talking about the same stuff, so. All right, it's good enough. Yeah, it was a wild time. And then it all ended. Eventually, they all got sued into oblivion, right? And then BitTorrent was the next one where everyone was sharing shit via BitTorrent. And now they still exist for, pirates, but most people, really what it was the industry was getting ridiculous. For example, the music industry in particular, okay? They were selling musical albums that was like 7 songs, each song 3 minutes long. So it's like 20 minutes of music for like $20. They're like, wait, what? You're going to charge me 20-something dollars for that? So the music industry got so bloated with what it was charging that people found this way to distribute music free. Same thing with movies. So now what's happened is, you don't really need this anymore. Why? Because you can easily get music, movies on the cheap. You don't have to spend an insane amount of money anymore to get music and movies because everything went digital, right? But before that, when everything was the physical medium, everything was so overpriced that that's what threw people to demand these better alternatives, even if it was stealing, right? Today, like, why would I do that? If I can easily buy any song, any album, if I can just get a subscription to one of these music services that's like $10 a month, but I get all the music I want on demand instantly, why do I care about having to find a place to illegally download, which is probably rife with viruses, right? So now it's not even worth the risk anymore. Just get a Spotify account, just get, one of these on-demand, get a Max account, get a Netflix account, and just watch what you want on demand for, $10 a month, and don't get viruses on your devices. And that's what everyone does now, Okay. Now, this I remember existing.
March 1, 1997.
I was just going to say, I remember this expansion pack existing for the N64, but I personally never had one. And I always wondered what it was for because I never figured out how you would use it, like what it did. So that's what this video is about.
This is the launch date of the Nintendo 64 in Australia. Yes, I'm aware that it launched in '96 in North America and Japan, but back in those days, I was a very poor college student and there was no way that I could afford the price to import a system from overseas. But it didn't matter. When the Nintendo 64 did launch in Australia, it changed my life. I fell in love with the hardware.
Okay, I want to know about the expansion pack. I don't need you to hear all this baloney, right? Okay.
Then all games must run within those 4 megabytes of memory, correct? Well, not exactly. As it turns out, there was a grand total of 2 games that actually required the Nintendo 64 expansion pack, Donkey Kong 64 and Majora's Mask.
Oh, Donkey Kong 64 needed it? I didn't know that. Donkey Kong 64 needed this expansion pack, and Majora's Mask needed the expansion pack. So all it did is added more RAM to the console? Okay.
These 2 games required the expansion pack and would not work without it. A third game, Perfect Dark, did on the box advertise that the expansion pack was required, however, it could still run without one, offering about 35% of the complete game. And this was something that was advertised on the back of the box. If you didn't have the expansion pack, then you were out of luck. If you did, then you had access to the entire game. Nintendo was very smart to not actually require the expansion pack in games immediately, and it was something that they introduced with Donkey Kong 64. In other words, they were far more forward thinking. They waited almost a year before making the memory pack available. This meant that if you wanted access to high fidelity graphics, faster frame rates, and more content, then you would be more inclined to purchase the expansion pack. Now let's talk about DK64 in some detail. It's a 3D platform action adventure game.
It's terrible. One of the
which,
worst games
as
ever
Donkey
made.
Kong, you explore an island and collect items to progress through mini-games and puzzles. Now this game itself is very polarizing. Some people love DK64, many people hate it as the...
No one loves it. Everyone hates it. It's atrocious. It's a smear. It's a big duty stain on the underpants of gaming. It never should have existed. Because there's so many other better 3D platformers of the time. It was ambitious. I will give it that. It was ambitious. But it sucked.
Worst collectathon ever in video games, but that is beside the point. Nintendo themselves spent $22 million marketing DK64 as the big holiday game of 1999. Wow. And it was the very first game that not only required the expansion pack, it even came bundled with the game itself, so no one was left behind. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Exactly how does DK64 make use of this expansion pack? If we look at the game on face value, it's an impressive looking game, no question, but it's really not any more impressive than say Conker's Bad Fur Day, another rare Nintendo 64 title that really pushed the hardware to its limits, which didn't use the expansion pack. And there is a long-standing myth that the expansion pack was used in DK64 to address a memory leak, which would end up crashing the game after a few hours of play. So the solution then was just to bundle the 4 meg expansion pack with every single copy of DK64, effectively mitigating the issue itself. Now it is important to note here that the term memory leak was never used by Rare themselves. They called it a game-breaking glitch or a bug. Now before we proceed and dive deeper into this topic, I do think it's important to illustrate to you guys what a memory leak is with a real-world example. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now.
Excuse me.
Now to best explain what a memory leak is in its truest form, I've got this very simple program here, and basically when this runs, it's going to go into a loop and it's going to run continuously until I break out of the program. And what this program is doing is very simple. It's allocating a piece of memory to store 4 bytes or the size of an integer, and then it's assigning that integer to the value 15 and then printing that out to the screen. The underlying root cause for this is that we're allocating a block of memory, but we're never freeing it up, and we keep allocating memory in a loop, but it never gets freed. Right.
So that happens with everything. That happens with browsers right now, where you'll be in a browser and you'll have it open for an extended period of time, then all of a sudden it locks up, freezes. Like, what just happened? And you go to your task manager and you look at your system use. It's like, why is my RAM at 80%? Oh, because you left the browser open for like a week and all your tabs have memory leaks. So that's what happens. It uses memory, and even when it's not using it anymore, it doesn't free up the memory. So your computer eventually runs out of memory. So that's what happened, I guess, with DK64 here, is that it wasn't freeing up memory and this pack fixed it.
For engineers who worked on DK64 The extra RAM was only ever used to take advantage of ongoing improvements in technology.
There you go.
Specifically
Vertex
more
lighting.
advanced
That's
vertex
it.
lighting. And the final piece of this is that there is an ongoing reverse engineering effort for DK64 right now. And it's very apparent that the memory map of the game featured almost the entire set of 8 megabytes. So the concept of a memory leak restricting Donkey Kong 64's release without an expansion pack is simply false. But outside of these 2 required games, the expansion pack did a pretty decent job of...
I think I had Turok 1. I don't think I had Turok 2. I think I had Turok 1. And that was a really difficult but a very good game.
of enhancing games with over 60 titles supporting it. Ask any developer out there and they will tell you that having more RAM is always welcome. It allows features and enhancements that was simply just not possible without. And since Nintendo opened up the expansion pack support to many games that were in development, developers would use the expansion pack in some pretty interesting ways. The first and most common method was to increase resolutions, but in many scenarios this would come at the expense of reduced frame rates. This is because increasing the frame buffer needs more time to render a complete frame. The Nintendo 64 supports a maximum resolution of 640 by 480. Most games with high resolution support never actually hit this mark. Take for example Turok 2. Its internal resolution is running at 320 by 240, but with the expansion pack it introduces a high-res 480 by 360 mode. The effect is a much cleaner game, but once again at the expense of a frame rate, and in some parts of the game it's quite noticeable. FIFA 99 is another game that also supports a super high resolution mode, and this is running at 640 by 480, and it does look very clean. But look how much choppier the gameplay is in this mode. Vigilante 8 is a game that's basically a ripoff.
That sucks. So even if you got the pack, it's still a trade-off. It's kind of like today. Do you want performance mode or do you want resolution mode? I want performance mode. I mean, unless I'm playing a cinematic game, that's a choose-your-own-adventure style game or whatever, why on earth would I ever want lower frame rate? It makes it worse for reactions. The game looks blurry, right? Choppy. I don't care that there's more detail in the environment. I want the game to perform well. It's a game after all, not a movie, right? Maybe if it was a movie, then I wouldn't care and I would pick resolution mode, but I always want performance mode. So that is kind of sad. So some games had resolution, some games had texture increases. What other enhancements were there?
Enough. You can really notice the difference in quality when switching between the standard and the high color mode with the expansion pack enabled.
Color?
Another method to provide an enhanced experience with the memory pack was to simply use the additional memory to add new functionality to existing games. And one of the best examples that I can remember is Gauntlet Legends. Now this game is a pretty faithful conversion from the arcade, but if you want to play 4-player co-op, it's only available with the expansion pack, and that extra memory facilitates having 4 players on screen at once. Hydro Thunder is another example of this. The expansion pack is required for 3 and 4-player multiplayer. Otherwise, without the expansion pack, it can only be up to a 2-player game. And finally, some games use the expansion pack in ways that really benefit the overall performance but in subtle ways. And a great example of this are the acclaimed sports games such as All-Star Baseball. With the expansion pack loaded, there is a lot of pre-fetching and preloading of data that's being loaded in and decompressed ahead of time. And usually this was done when the title screen was being displayed. Now overall, performance is improved because there is a lot of data that's already in memory, which result in a better frame rate. But this was something that was quite subtle. Now,
Alright, so it wasn't amazing. It wasn't groundbreaking. It would have added some extra performance to certain games, but it also wasn't really required. It was mostly if you wanted to do 4-player modes or get a higher resolution mode, but then you would have a trade-off with frame rate anyway. So honestly, the only game that really needed it was DK64, like they said, or Majora's Mask. Those are the 2 big ones, right? Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for watching DSP versus the Internet. See you in the next part.